What's the root cause of inequality in the world?
Yeah. We'll get to that eventually. This presentation is an attempt to provide an answer to that question. But we'll start with the most basic thing. What is money? So traditionally, money has been seen to perform three roles in economic thought. One is it is a medium of exchange. I want a watch, you want a laptop, I have an apple, you have a banana, something. We want to exchange stuff. It's easier to do when we have money because then we don't need a double coincidence of wants. The second thing is a unit of account. I can't tell how many apples I would pay to go to a Taylor Swift concert, but I can tell how many euros I would pay for an apple and how many euros I would pay for a Taylor Swift concert. So it helps us sort of price things. And the third thing is it's a store of value. Today I do something, I go to a field, I plow, I make some rice, I sell it, and if I can't store that value, I have to consume it before it spoils. But if I have something like money, I can store that value and I can then use that 5 years, 10 years later. So that's the store of value function of money. Traditionally, money has been something that is already valuable in society, that people want to keep, that is preferably durable, that is fungible. Durable is that it lasts very long, it doesn't spoil easily. Fungible is that I can exchange my money for your money, very simply. Starting off, people use things like grains and tobacco and cattle as money. That worked. Then people evolved to things like shells and unique stones and pearls and all of that. And eventually, when metals were discovered and all of that, you had things like nickel, copper, silver, and then eventually gold as money. And gold has been, or was rather, our best form of money for a very long time. Gold was durable, it doesn't spoil easily, gold was fungible. 1 kg of gold with me, 1 kg of gold with you, we can swap, it doesn't make a difference. And gold was scarce. It's not something that anyone can produce like this, like you have to mine it, you have to purify it, and there's only limited supply. So it was not something that could be inflated away easily, or no one could cheat you on gold. You have to have gold. But the problem was that gold had some limitations. For instance, there was a problem that if I want to buy one apple, how do I buy that apple using gold? I'll have to break it into a tiny, tiny bit, and then it's very difficult to then keep track of those tiny bits and weigh it every single time. So banks came into being. What a bank did was you gave your gold to the bank, and the bank gave you a certificate in exchange saying, yes, this person has deposited, let's say, 1 kilogram of gold with me, and then the certificates could vary in the amount. So you could split it up by saying like, okay, 5 grams, and 50 grams, 100 grams, 500 grams, how much ever certificate that you want. And then you could use that certificate as money. And people would trust it because your gold is with the bank. But eventually, as a bank, let's say I have people's gold, and someone comes to me and says that, hey, I have this exciting project, and I know I can make a lot of money on it, but I need some capital. And I'm a bank, and I would love to fund that project because I get a piece of it. So what I'll do is I'll take my gold, that someone else deposited to me, and give it off to this person. And this person will use that gold to do whatever they do, and if they make a profit, I get a bit of it, and my principal back. And this was the birth of what is called as fractional reserve banking. So the amount of claims on the gold, so the bank issued a certificate when that person came to me for money, even though that person did not deposit that money. So the number of claims on money, on gold, was higher than the actual amount of gold with the bank. And even modern day, that's how it happens. So when you go to a bank for a home loan, and they give you a loan, they're not giving you money that they already have. Whenever a bank issues you a loan, they create money out of thin air, and that's what they put into your account, and this is perfectly legal, and this is how the world works. The problem that came with the gold-based system as well, this was already a problem that banks were lending more than they had, but with the advent of information technology systems, like they laid like lines undersea across the Pacific, and they could communicate basically instantly from like the US to Europe. What that meant is now you had a money that traveled not as fast as information traveled. So you could communicate instantly, but gold took time to send on ships and everything. So then they started treating money as just a number in a ledger. So I have a book, you have a book, we keep account of all the transactions, and that's money now. It's a number. But that was also completely fine. That was also it was not terrible, it was still working. But in the early 20th century, there were 2 world wars that were fought, and governments needed to fund those wars. And I'm going to try and explain how they did that. Let's say these are 2 sandwiches, and these are 2 people, person A, person B, and we are reducing a simple model of an economy. The entire world makes only 2 sandwiches, has only 2 people, and each of these people have like, let's say €1 with them, okay? Currently, each of them can buy 1 sandwich with their money. That's how it works. Like you can buy one, that's perfect. Let's say I am the government and I decide to print 2 more euros and I give €1 to you and €1 to the other person. You have more money, but you're not richer because the economy still makes 2 sandwiches. So you can still buy 1 sandwich each, even though you have more money. Let's go back to the normal example. Instead of giving it to these people, the government decides that, hey, I want to fund a war, I want to fight a war, and I need taxes, I need money to fight the war. So I want 0.5 of your money and 0.5 of your money. So now I have €1, so I can buy this 1 sandwich, and now each of you are left with half a sandwich. People wouldn't like that. Loss aversion kicks in when someone comes and tries to take your money. There's a smart workaround. Instead of doing any of this, you just leave people with their original €1 here, €1 here, and you just print €2 because you can do that. You're the government. What this means is now this person can buy half a sandwich, this person can buy half a sandwich, and the government can buy the whole sandwich and fund the war. This is basically indirect taxation. This is a smart way to steal from people. This started basically rampantly in the early 20th century, and this went on and on and on. And then we had something called the Bretton Woods Agreement, where all other countries agreed to peg. So even when this was happening, by the way, it was still a gold standard. There was still gold in the bank with the government, and on paper, every single dollar, or every single euro or franc or whatever was tied to some amount of gold. So you could exchange, you could go to the bank, you give $1 and they give you some ounces of gold in return. In the Bretton Woods Agreement, everyone said like, okay, we are going off the gold standard, only US will stay on the gold standard, so dollar is tied to gold and all other currencies are tied to the dollar. But in 1971, by 1971, countries figured out that there were a lot more dollars on the market than there could possibly be gold to back it with. Because the US was fighting wars in Vietnam, engaging in the Cold War, and just printing a lot of money left, right, and center. So France basically sent ships full of dollars to the US coast and be like, you take the dollars and give us our gold back. And then other European countries started doing that. And eventually, in 1971, the US government had to go off the gold standard because they literally did not have the gold to pay for all the fake dollars that they had printed, the false dollars. So you're now in a situation where now you have a fiat standard. So money today is not backed with anything. Governments print as much as they want. When they print money, they dilute your purchasing power, as I showed. When they print money, you lose the percentage of the economy that your money accounted for. But what also happens at the same time, because people figured this out long ago, that this was the effect of money printing, that hard assets that were scarce, that could not be reproduced or replicated easily, like land, real estate, like gold itself, like rare famous paintings, like stocks of successful money-making companies. These hard assets is where all the money started flowing in. So if you want to preserve your wealth, if you want to preserve your purchasing power, you would put your money in these hard assets, so over time you don't lose your purchasing power. And what this means, and we know that most of the real estate, most of the stocks, most of these fancy, expensive paintings are owned by the rich, by the haves, by the 1%. What that means is because most commoners keep their money in cash, in a bank account or under a mattress or something, the value of their money, the purchasing power of their money kept going down, while the purchasing power of the money that the rich people kept, which they stored in real estate, basically in hard assets, kept going up. And this is a continuous process of increasing inequality. And after getting off the gold standard, governments printed much more money than they ever had before. During the time they got off the gold standard, the debt to GDP ratios of governments were anywhere between like 10, 20, at max 40%. Currently the US is at 130%, Japan 250%, China 350%, and that's China, so who knows if it's true. But this is only going to get worse. At today's state, it is almost a mathematical certainty that we are heading towards hyperinflation, basically in the whole world. Because if you look at the expenses that governments have, most of their expenses are either written into law, so cannot be changed, or if you try to change them, there will be a civil war or an economic collapse. For instance, healthcare, education, public services, any kind of social security benefits. These are huge. These are usually the top expenses of any rich industrialized nation. After that, many countries like the US have defense as their main expense. But if you go to number 3 in the US, it's interest payments on existing debt. So already they have accumulated so much debt, 130% of GDP, not of earnings, but of GDP. Can I get 1 or 2 more minutes?
Please, yes. Yes, please.
Are people interested?
Definitely. Can you? But do we have it?
We are all interested, but if everybody did this, then we would have
Okay, I'll
chance to explain world economy in 10 minutes.
I'm trying
to conclude.
Yeah. So the point is,
2 of my minutes.
Yeah. Also, I give you 2 of my minutes. So.
Yeah. So the point is, we are running towards a situation where governments are printing more and more money, and they don't have a choice. The choice is, and I laid out plainly to you, I'm a politician, I come to you and I say, hey, there is too much debt, we have to pay off the debt, otherwise we're stuck in a situation where people get poorer and poorer, inequality increases. I mean, there was a time when you could be a carpenter or a plumber, you could be basically a blue-collar worker, and buy a house and raise 6 kids, and your wife would not even be working. And today you can have both couples, both husband and wife or whatever working, and still you take a decade to pay off just the mortgage, and it's so expensive to raise children, and anything of real value, be it place to live in, education, healthcare. I mean, in the Europe it's slightly better, but in other countries it's getting much, much worse. These are very difficult to get your hands on. So the point is, I'm a politician, I'm coming to you and I'm saying, hey, I want to fix this problem. What we're going to have to do is, I'm going to have to cut a lot of social spending. So I'm going to have to spend less on healthcare. Healthcare is going to get expensive. Education is going to get expensive. Public transport is going to get expensive. Energy is going to get expensive. Your lives are going to be pretty shit basically for the next 20 to 30 years, which is the amount of time it might take us to pay the debt. We are going to have to cut defense spending as well. So maybe Russia will invade us. We don't know. We're going to have to take that risk. Will you vote for me? In 20 to 30 years, maybe we fix the problem. I don't think a lot of course people will vote for this person. So it's not feasible. There will always be someone who will come, and we are in this sort of suboptimal equilibrium where let's say this is the main equilibrium that we want to get into, and we're a ball, and we're sort of stuck here, and it's very hard to get out of here. It's very hard to convince people to be yeah, we have to reduce debt. So government, and they see the inequality. They see that there are people who have so much, so of course it's possible for other people to have a little more, but it's just that the system is so rigged that we are currently based on, that they can keep printing more and more money. They can keep this UBI thing that they talk about. It's not them being generous. It's going to happen because it will need to happen, otherwise there will be a civil war. It's going to get to a point where it gets so expensive without the government funding basic living things that most people, or at least a significant chunk of people, cannot survive. Already if you look at housing, it's so expensive. Most educated working people can't afford to buy a home. Even if you're just renting a house, 40 to 50% of your income just goes in that rent. That's crazy. That was not always the case. It's easy to forget. Talk to your grandparents. Point is, what's the solution? Is there a solution from within the system? I don't think so. Anyone who tries to understand the system, you just scratch your hair and you're how do you get out of a problem that big? So, what system do we move into? And this is where I need you to be a little bit open-minded. Do you know what the symbol means?
Bitcoin?
Yes. Bitcoin is money, it's like gold, but it's much better. Let's discuss the problems that we had with gold.
You are starting with Bitcoin now because your
no, I'm not going to spend any time with Bitcoin.
And it's also quite a big topic.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend any time. I'm going to let people ask questions if they want to. I'm just quickly saying it has a 21 million cap. So there are going to be 21 million Bitcoin, and that's it. You cannot print more. This is literally in the code, which means that as the economy expands, see, technology is inherently deflationary. Technology means that we get better at producing stuff. It gets cheaper to produce stuff. We can produce more stuff. So in an economy where the money was not rigged, where governments were not printing so much, as we produce more and more sandwiches, everyone with the same money, with the same euro, could buy more sandwiches. I could buy 2 sandwiches if there were 4 with my single euro. But because they're printing so much money, that even though my money is not changing or it's increasing, but my purchasing power is decreasing. But if you have fixed money supply, so if I own, let's say, 0.01 Bitcoin, it represents a fixed proportion of the purchasing power in the whole world. No one can take that away from you.
That's why, that's because, the fiat decreases, fiat value decreases, and the crypto value, for example, Bitcoin increases. Like you for €1 value is so much less than like 1 Bitcoin. So that's the principle, right? That's because every year Bitcoin increases, and it's more expensive, and basic money is decreasing the value.
It goes up, it goes down.
Yes.
It's a very volatile asset because it's a very young asset. Gold is like centuries old. Bitcoin is 14 years old right now. The adoption of Bitcoin is less than 2% of the world, so less than 2% of the world's population is exposed to any sort of like Bitcoin or crypto asset. So it's still very volatile. There's a lot of FOMO and FUD cycles, so people come in and the price goes up and people go out and the price falls. But eventually, the long-term signal, if you can ignore the volatility, the long-term signal is this.
And with basic money like euros.
Yeah, everything, the price of everything goes to zero.
Last question.
When priced in Bitcoin, the price of real estate is going to zero when priced in Bitcoin. The price of any valuable resource will go to zero when priced in a hard fixed money.
This is a very good sales pitch. I buy it. But what would be your key concern with this technology? Speaking about ethics and criticism of this development in the future.
Can you point out anything specific and then I can answer that? Or does anyone else have anything specific, criticism or question about this technology? I've spent the last 6 months just reading this, so maybe I can help.
I have a question that if it exists side by side with money, doesn't it just become just like buying fine art or something? That you have some hard asset and the value goes wrong because Bitcoin skyrockets and your money is... So.
Currently, it exists side by side with money. Bitcoin is very young, the adoption is very low. But eventually, the idea is that it would replace money. So you would have this one currency that you can use everywhere in the world.
How would you force that?
You don't have to force it. Okay, why does anyone put their money into something like Bitcoin? You expect it to grow. And as more and more people put their money in, more and more people realize, open their eyes to the theft of the government and experience falling purchasing power, experience the inequality. There will be more and more questions, and there's already a bubbling space that is talking about these things, that is educating people about these things, about these actions that you don't learn in textbooks. Of course they don't teach you any of this stuff in textbooks.
I would suggest that important differences to have for a for example, long-time investment. If you have crypto like on a spot wallet or you have it on a cold wallet, it's better than just exchanging it there and back. That's the thing. Like cross margins, for example, would lose you a lot of money. So you probably know the principles.
Yeah, that's
so,
investment. That's a slightly different aspect.
Yes, but
I think Martin's question was more about how do we get there?
Yes.
How do we get governments? You look at many countries in the world today. You look at Venezuela. Hyperinflation currency is worthless. This has happened with Yugoslavia. It happened with Weimar Republic. It happened with Rome at some point when they started diluting their silver coins. It is happening right now with Turkey, with Lebanon, with Argentina, with Zimbabwe. It might happen, it says, like it might happen with the UK at some point. It feels like UK is crumbling as well. So you have countries where inflation is really skyrocketing, and this is structural. Like this is really there is no way out. Mathematically speaking, there is no way out.
But as I have spoken already, it's 21 million of Bitcoin. So it's limited supply, like there is a limited supply of gold. So basically Bitcoin is like gold.
But better.
Yes, better, because you may transfer it in the moment. You don't need the ship
And you can
travel.
verify immediately. How do you verify?
Sure.
If I say I have gold, there's no way to
But
verify.
you cannot get richer by buying gold or by buying Bitcoin. You may just stop being poorer because of the inflation. Because every I said, because of inflation, you get less and less sandwich, and you can save it with a Bitcoin. But Bitcoin will not rise, not really. It rises only relatively to the fiat money.
Yeah.
This is the optimal point. The pessimistic point of view is in the next decade, when the quantum computing will be quite widespread, they will take you everything.
They will what?
They will take you everything, every one Bitcoin.
Mining will not be expensive anymore.
Not even those. They will steal the money from the Bitcoin bank. It already happens.
Okay. So there's already hacks. I can address the questions there. So your one question was, will Bitcoin actually make you wealth? If the world is already Bitcoinized, so if Bitcoin is already the global reserve currency, everyone is using them, then no. Because then currently the value of Bitcoin is rising a lot because adoption is very low. If you have this like S-curve of adoption, right? We are basically like somewhere here right now.
So
right now
it's
if you
not
invest and if
solution.
Bitcoin becomes successful,
It's not a solution for global inequality.
Pardon?
Is not a solution for solving global inequality. It will like freeze the inequality.
That's what I was talking about.
Because
long-term
the richer people will buy more bitcoins.
So what happened in the current system is why inequality increases even though technology makes things cheaper. So you can move to a system where as technology makes things cheaper and more easily accessible to people, people can actually enjoy the benefits of that. And what money printing does, it's a transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. So you have cash, someone has land, I print money, I'm the government. The cash's purchasing value goes down, the land's purchasing value goes up. That process also stops.
Not really, because if we are speaking about the means of production, you have the workforce. This is your means of production, and you are exchanging your work for something else. There are people who have like big money, who are capitalists, and there are people who have lands and so on, and most of the people have just their work.
So what's the point?
Sorry, I suggest to continue this discussion after the
Yeah,
class.
There is one more point I would like to get. You have spoken about like solving politically this oscillation or this inflation and so on, and you have spoken that it will need 20 years of like tightening the belts.
More than that, depending on the economy.
This is a great paradox, because the equality of votes make you unable to deal with the inequality of the economy.
Yeah, precisely. It's a paradox. We are stuck. We are in a suboptimal equilibrium. That's what I was trying to say in this. We're stuck in a place where we don't want to be there, but we are stuck. There's no way out. Within the system, there's no way out.
The end. This is what we have not only used 2 minutes of time.